The morning dawned cold and unhurried, painting the sky a pale grey that seemed to settle over everything. The man walked slowly down the wet cobblestone street, his worn shoes soaking through with each step. He carried the weight of time on his shoulders, and in his eyes, the shadow of one who had learned to accept silence as a companion. Before we dive into this story, leave your comment with a rating from 1 to 10 and tell us what city you're joining us from. May this moment bring reflection and emotion to your heart. He carried a bag of old tools and the watchful gaze of his young son, who followed a few yards behind, dragging a broken toy cart. The boy didn't complain, never complained. He had learned early that his father worked hard to put food on the table, even if sometimes that food was slow to arrive. Hunger bit harder than the cold, but there was something in his father's presence that calmed the emptiness in his stomach. A silent security, made of small gestures and firm glances. The streets were empty at that hour. The affluent neighborhood woke later, protected by high walls and iron gates. The man knew this routine well. He had rung dozens of doorbells, asked for work at dozens of houses. Sometimes he'd get a quick job. Other times, just a look of disdain and a door slammed in his face. But he kept going, not out of pride, but out of necessity. And because he had a son who depended on him, he stopped before a tall, wrought-iron gate from which came the sound of a piano. Slow, precise, almost cold notes that drifted through the air like a memory. He stood still, listening. There was something in that sound that reminded him of a distant time, a time when life seemed simpler, or perhaps just less heavy. After a while, he took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. The chime seemed to jar with the calm of the place, an out-of-place sound, too humble for that kind of silence. The son looked at his father, waiting, always waiting. The man ran a hand over the boy's head, a quick gesture full of affection. He wanted his son to know that everything was okay, even when it wasn't. The housekeeper appeared with a suspicious look. She was a middle-aged woman, with the tired face of someone who works hard and smiles little. She looked the man up and down, then the boy. She hesitated. The man asked to collect the trash from the house, any service in exchange for food. His voice was calm, without pleading, without desperation, just an honest proposal for work. She said the lady of the house was busy, that he should come back another day. But there was something in his tired voice, in his way of asking without begging, that made her change her mind. Perhaps it was the boy's presence. Perhaps it was the dignity in the eyes of that street-stained man. She opened the gate and let him in. The yard was impeccable, the kind of beauty that comes from control, not life. Every bush precisely trimmed, every flower in its rightful place. Nothing spontaneous, nothing wild. The man bent down and began to work carefully. He cleaned, collected, swept, unhurriedly, as if each gesture held an ancient meaning. His calloused hands moved with a precision that only hard labor teaches. From inside the house, the piano continued to play. The sound seemed to come from a distant time, from a memory he tried to avoid. The son sat on the curb playing with a bottle cap. He made it into a car, pushing it along the smooth sidewalk, creating stories in his head. The man watched him out of the corner of his eye, always attentive. Even while working, he never lost sight of his son. It had been like that since the boy's mother left them, since it was just the two of them against the world. When he looked up, he saw a figure on the porch. A woman, wrapped in a light robe, watched in silence. His heart seemed to stop for a second. The face was the same one he had once learned by heart, but now there was something hardened, distant, shaped by years of absence. Her hair was shorter, more neatly styled. Her skin had the glow of someone well cared for, but her eyes were the same, those eyes he knew so well. She looked at him as one looks at something familiar but impossible, as if she were seeing a ghost, a memory that should have remained buried in the past. and he, realizing, averted his gaze, continuing his work as if nothing had happened. His hands trembled a little as he picked up the trash bag, but he controlled it. He couldn't show weakness, not now. His son, oblivious to the weight of the moment, played with the bottle cap. Sometimes he smiled at his father, and that smile was the only possible rest. The woman also watched the boy, and something changed in her face, an involuntary tenderness, as if she saw a reflection of a past she had tried to bury. The boy had his eyes, the same shape to his face, the same stubbornness in his chin. Inside the house, the piano stopped. The silence that settled was heavier than the music. The woman took a step back, moving into the shadow of the porch. But she remained there, watching, unable to move, unable to go inside, trapped between two worlds, the one she had and the one she abandoned. The morning stretched out in slow gestures. The sun, shy behind the clouds, began to warm the air. The man worked with his usual calm, gathering dry leaves, tidying the flower beds, sweeping the sidewalk. Every movement had an economy of energy that came from necessity. There was no hurry, but also no unnecessary pause. It was the rhythm of someone who knows the value of every minute of work. The housekeeper returned with a glass of water. She offered it to the man, who thanked her with a nod. He drank slowly, savoring it. The water was fresh, clean, different from what he drank from the rusty faucet in the shack where he lived. He offered the rest to his son, who drank eagerly, getting his whole face wet. The man smiled. It was a small smile, almost invisible, but it was there. As he picked up one of the trash bags, something fell from his pocket. A small, worn keychain with the mark of a heart. The metal was darkened by time, the edges rounded by constant use. It fell to the ground with a dry thud. The woman, who had returned to the porch, recognized it immediately. She was the one who had given him that gift years ago, when they still shared the same roof and the same dreams. She had bought it at a flea market with the little money she had saved. He had kept it all these years. Time seemed to stop for a few seconds. The piano fell silent. Even the wind stopped blowing. She took a step back as if the memory had physical weight. Her hands went to her chest, trying to control her breathing, which suddenly became difficult. He bent down, picked up the keychain, and put it back in his pocket, unhurriedly, without drama, like someone putting away something precious that was almost lost. She continued to watch him work. His every movement seemed laden with an ancient silence. There was dignity in his gestures, even in the face of poverty. No demands, no lamentations, just the presence of someone who had learned to survive without losing his humanity. She remembered how he used to be, his easy smile, his hand always ready to help, the dreams they shared on summer nights. Simple dreams, but true. She remembered the day she left him, the marriage proposal she received from a rich, older man who promised security and comfort. She remembered his look when she said she was leaving. There were no shouts, no drama, just that painful silence and his hand releasing hers for the last time. He didn't try to stop her. He just said he respected her choice, but that he would always be there if she changed her mind. She laughed. She thought it was naivety. She thought it was weakness. The afternoon began to draw in, and the light changed color. The boy, tired of playing, fell asleep sitting on the ground, leaning against the mansion wall, his head tilted to the side, his breathing deep and peaceful. The man looked at him tenderly and took off his own jacket, covering the small body. He was left in just his shirt, but didn't seem to feel the cold. The woman watched from a distance, immobile, as if something inside her was slowly unraveling. That simple gesture, a father covering his sleeping son, held more love than all the expensive gifts her current husband gave her. It held more truth than all the dinners in sophisticated restaurants. It held more life than everything she had built in recent years. Time seemed to spin in circles, bringing back everything she had tried to forget. The marriage she abandoned in search of a comfortable life. The promise of happiness that never materialized, the loneliness hidden beneath expensive dresses and silent dinners. The husband she had now was a good man, on paper, a provider, educated, punctual, but distant, always distant, married to his work, to appearances, to status. She was just another beautiful piece of furniture in his house, admired but not loved. He, standing there now, stained with dirt and sweat, was the living memory of what she had lost, and what she chose to lose. But it wasn't just guilt that moved her. It was also a kind of admiration. The man before her, tired and poor, still had something she hadn't been able to buy with all the money in the world: peace with his own destiny. He didn't seem bitter, didn't seem resentful, just tired but whole, as if he had made peace with the life he had, or at least learned to carry it without complaining. The sound of the wind cut through the garden, sweeping dry leaves. Inside the house the clock ticked off the slow hours, a reminder of what time mercilessly demands. The housekeeper walked through the living room, glanced at her employer on the porch, noticed the tension in the air. She said nothing, she just lowered her eyes and continued her work. There were things that weren't asked in that house. The man finished his work and gathered his belongings. He folded the empty bags, put his tools back in the torn sack, each object in its place, with the care of one who has little and cannot waste anything. He was about to wake his son when the housekeeper appeared with a bag of food. She said it was a thank you from the lady of the house. Her voice was neutral, professional, but her eyes held a hint of compassion. He hesitated. He looked towards the porch, but she was no longer there. She had gone inside, escaping the encounter she both feared and longed for. He took the bag with silent gratitude, just a nod, and gently woke his son. The boy opened his eyes, confused, still half asleep. His father smiled and said it was time to go. The boy stood up, rubbing his eyes, and held his father's hand. As they walked to the gate, the boy looked back at the big, beautiful house. He said he would like to live in a place like that someday. His father didn't answer. He just squeezed the small hand in his and kept walking. Before leaving, he looked at the house one last time. The windows seemed to watch them, full of something that wasn't exactly sadness, but wasn't peace either. From the other side of the window, behind the expensive lace curtains, the woman watched him leave. Her hands trembled, her gaze fixed on the figure moving away with his son. Inside her, she felt the weight of a love that time had not managed to bury, only to lull to sleep. A love that woke now, inconvenient, ill-timed, but real, so real it hurt. Night fell over the city. In the mansion, the lights came on one by one, illuminating the empty, cold rooms. Her husband arrived late, as always. He greeted her with a mechanical kiss on the forehead and went straight to his study. She remained alone in the living room, sitting at the piano, but didn't play. She just sat there, her hands on the keys, feeling the weight of the silence. In the shack on the other side of town, the man and his son ate dinner from the bag. There was fresh bread, cheese, fruit. Simple things that seemed like luxury. The boy ate with appetite, happy. His father ate slowly, thoughtfully. After dinner, they lay on the single bed they shared, covered by a thin blanket. The boy fell asleep quickly, tired from the day. The man stayed awake, looking at the leaky ceiling, thinking. The following days dragged on with the same slowness. The woman couldn't get the image out of her head. She saw the man in every corner of the house. She heard the boy's voice in the empty yard. At night, she dreamed of the past, of the days when they were poor but happy. She woke up sweating, her heart tight, certain that she had made the biggest mistake of her life. A week later, he returned. He rang the doorbell with the same timidity as before. The housekeeper recognized him and opened the gate without asking anything. She just said that the lady of the house had left instructions for him to come in if he returned. He entered, his son beside him, and began to work, always discreet, always silent. The woman watched him from her bedroom window. She didn't come downstairs, didn't show herself. She just watched. She wanted to understand what she felt. She wanted to be sure it wasn't just nostalgia, just guilt. But the more she watched, the more certain she became. There was something there that she had lost and that no money could buy back. He returned the next day, and the next, and the next. Always to do some work in the yard, always taking his son. Sometimes to collect leaves, other times to help with small repairs. The gatekeeper came to know him, to greet him. The housekeeper started leaving coffee ready for him. Small gestures of humanity that he received with silent gratitude. The boy began to play in the yard while his father worked. He ran among the trees, played with pebbles, built castles with the soft earth of the flower beds. The sound of his laughter began to fill the space that was once dominated only by the piano. The house, little by little, stopped seeming so cold. Even the housekeeper smiled more. As the weeks passed, something changed in the woman's gaze. The luxurious clothes no longer seemed necessary. She started wearing simpler clothes when she was home. Her bedroom mirror began to reflect a more human, less fabricated image. Sometimes she would stop at the piano, but she wouldn't play. She would just stand there, her hands on the keys, remembering a time when music was born from love, not loneliness. Her husband noticed the change. He asked if everything was all right. She said yes, just tired. He accepted the answer without questioning, as he accepted everything. Relieved not to have to deal with emotional problems, he returned to his business. The distance between them, which was already great, became an abyss. One afternoon, as the sun set, painting the sky orange and pink, she watched the man fixing a rusty gate. His son helped him, offering tools with childlike seriousness. He carefully handed the screwdriver, held the screws, cleaned the rust with an old cloth. Their laughter echoed through the patio when the gate finally worked again. And something inside her broke, a layer of pride, of distance, of fear. It was there, in that small gesture of companionship between father and son, that life seemed real again. There was no falsity, no masks, just two human beings working together, happy with something as simple as fixing an old gate. She went downstairs. For the first time in weeks, she walked through the door and into the yard. The two stopped working when they saw her approach. The man stood up, wiping his dirty hands on his already dirty pants. The boy looked at her with curiosity, without fear. She stopped a few feet away. The words wouldn't come. What to say after so long? How to start a conversation that should have happened years ago? "Is the gate working?" was all she managed to say. Her voice came out weaker than she intended. "It is," he replied. His voice was the same as always, calm, without resentment. Silence. The boy looked from one to the other, sensing that something important was happening, but not understanding what. She looked at the child. His eyes were just like his father's, so similar that it hurt. "What's your name?" she asked the boy. "Miguel," the boy replied shyly. "Like my grandpa." She felt tears well up, but held them back. His father had been named Miguel. She remembered the wake, how he had held firm throughout the funeral, without shedding a tear in front of others. Only later, alone at home, had he cried. She was there. She had held him as he cried. That was before everything fell apart. "That's a beautiful name," she said. The man put away his tools in silence. He realized she had more to say, but couldn't. He didn't rush her. He just waited, with the same patience he always had. The boy sat on the grass, starting to play with a fallen flower. Are you okay?" she finally asked. A stupid question, she knew. It was obvious he wasn't, but it was all she could say. "We are," he corrected, looking at his son. "We have each other. It's enough." Those words were like a punch to her stomach, simple, direct, but laden with a truth she couldn't deny. They had each other, and her, she had a big house, expensive clothes, a stuffed bank account. But did she have anyone? Did she really? "I'm sorry." The words came out before she could think. For everything, for leaving, for not staying. He looked at her for the first time since he had returned. Truly looked. His eyes were the same, but there was a new wisdom there, an acceptance of things as they were. "You did what you thought was best for you," he said. "I don't hold a grudge. Life goes on, for everyone." She wanted to scream that it had been a mistake, that not a day passed without her thinking of him, that she woke up in the middle of the night with a tight chest, remembering what they had. But she didn't say any of that. She just nodded, tears finally escaping. "He's handsome," she said, looking at Miguel. "He looks like you." "He has your eyes," he replied. "The same color. I always thought they were the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen." Her heart seemed to stop. After everything, after being abandoned, after enduring hunger and cold, he still remembered that. Still remembered her eyes, still thought they were beautiful. "I don't deserve it," she whispered. "It's not about deserving," he said. "It's about what's true, and the truth is, I never forgot, never wanted to forget." The boy got up and went to his father, holding his hand. He looked at the woman with curiosity. "Dad, is she your friend?" The man hesitated. He looked at her, waiting. The answer had to come from her. "She was," she said, kneeling to be at the boy's height. "She was a very good friend of your father's. But I made some bad choices, choices that drove me away from him." "Everyone makes mistakes," the boy said, with the simplicity of children. "Dad always says the important thing is to try to do better next time." She looked at the man. He shrugged, a small smile at the corner of his mouth. Even in poverty, he still taught his son values. He was still a better father than many she knew with all the money in the world. The following days were lighter. The piano played again, but now with soft, almost joyful notes. They weren't the technical, cold pieces from before. They were simple melodies she played from memory, songs she used to play for him years ago when they lived in a tiny apartment full of love. The man continued to return, but now there was a subtle difference. She would come down to talk. Nothing profound, nothing dramatic, just simple conversations about the day, about the boy, about small things. He spoke of the odd jobs he found, of the difficulty of finding stable work, of the dreams he had for his son. She listened, truly listened, in a way she hadn't listened to anyone in years. One morning she woke before her husband and prepared breakfast. She didn't ask the housekeeper to do it. She made it herself, toast with butter, fresh coffee, cut fruit, simple things. When her husband came down, he looked surprised. He asked what it was. She said she felt like making it. He ate distractedly, reading the newspaper, without noticing the effort, without noticing the change, without noticing that she was there, trying to find a way back to something real. In the afternoon, when the man arrived for work, she came down with a lunch container. She had made it for him and the boy. Rice, beans, a piece of meat, salad. Real food. He was speechless. He accepted it with such sincere thanks that she felt ashamed of everything she had. The boy ate heartily, praising every mouthful. He said it was delicious. She smiled. It had been years since a compliment made her feel something real. She sat with them on the grass, something unthinkable weeks ago. She got her expensive dress dirty, but she didn't care. They talked about silly things. The boy told her about the school he attended when they had money for supplies, about the friends he had in the neighborhood, about the stray dog he wanted to have, but his father said they couldn't afford. She listened attentively to everything, and she realized that this boy, poor and poorly dressed, was happier than many rich children she knew. Because he had something money couldn't buy, a present father, a father who loved him more than anything in the world. Her husband began to notice the changes. He asked about the man who was always in the yard. She said he was a gardener, nothing more. He didn't investigate further. Since when did he care about the details of the house? Since when did he care about her? One evening, after another silent dinner, she asked him if he was happy. Her husband stopped cutting his meat, surprised. He asked why the question. She said she just wanted to know. He thought for a moment, then said yes, he was satisfied with life. Satisfied, not happy, satisfied. As if life were just a list of objectives to be met, not something to be lived. She said nothing more, but the answer confirmed what she already knew. They were together, but they weren't. They shared a house, a bed, a last name. But they didn't share a life. Not really. Weeks turned into months. Fall arrived, painting the garden leaves in golden hues. The man continued to return whenever he needed work, whenever hunger became too pressing. But now it wasn't just work anymore. It was a ritual, a moment of connection they both looked forward to without admitting it. The boy grew. He became smarter, more talkative. He started bringing home drawings he made at school. He proudly showed them to her. She kept them all in a secret drawer in her bedroom. At night, when her husband slept, she looked at the drawings. Children playing, houses with gardens, families, always families. One day the man appeared with a deep cut on his hand. He had injured himself at a job trying to fix an old roof. She insisted on caring for the wound. He resisted, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. She led him inside to the kitchen and carefully cleaned the cut. His hands were so calloused, so marked by hard work. As she bandaged it, she felt a lump in her throat. Those hands had once held her tenderly, once caressed her face, once promised to take care of her forever. He watched her in silence. When she finished, their eyes met. They stayed like that for a few seconds that felt like an eternity. There were so many unspoken things in the air, so much regret, so much longing, so much love that never fully died. "Thank you," he said, his voice a little hoarse. "You're welcome," she replied, but neither of them moved. The boy ran into the kitchen, breaking the moment. He asked if his father was okay. She explained that he was, just a small cut. The boy seemed relieved. He hugged his father tightly. The man smiled, ruffling his son's hair. She watched them, father and son, a love so pure, so true. And she knew at that moment that she had to make a choice. She couldn't continue like this, divided between two lives, between two versions of herself. She had to choose the comfortable but empty security or the frightening but real uncertainty. That night she couldn't sleep. She stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking. Her husband snored beside her, indifferent to the storms raging within her. In the early morning she got up and went to the piano. She played for the first time in weeks, but not the technical pieces she had learned. She played from her heart. She played the melodies he liked. She played, crying. In the morning she made a decision. She waited for her husband to leave for work. She asked the housekeeper to leave too, gave her the day off. She stayed alone in the big house, thinking about how to say what she needed to say. She prepared lunch. She set the table with care. Not the formal dining room table. The kitchen table, simple and welcoming. When the man arrived for work, she was waiting. She said she needed to talk to him. He looked worried, thought he had done something wrong. She asked him to sit. He hesitated, but sat. The boy sat beside him, always clinging to his father. She served lunch. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then she took a deep breath and began to speak. She told him about the empty marriage, about the loneliness disguised as luxury, about the regrets that consumed her every night. She told him she had made the wrong choice, that she had traded love for comfort, and that comfort had never managed to fill the void. He listened without interrupting. His face was serious, attentive. When she finished, he remained silent for a long moment. The boy looked from one to the other, sensing the gravity of the moment even without fully understanding. "What are you saying?" he finally asked. "I'm saying I made a mistake, the biggest mistake of my life, and that if you give me a chance, I want to fix it. I want to come back to you, to the life we had. I don't care about the money, about the house, about any of that. I just want—" Her voice broke. "I just want back what I lost." He closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. When he opened them, there were tears there, tears he wouldn't let fall. "Do you know what you're asking?" His voice was controlled, but it trembled. "Do you know what it was like? What it was like to wake up and you weren't there anymore? What it was like to have to explain to myself, to my family, to everyone that you had left? What it was like to endure hunger, cold, despair, but the worst of all was your absence. I know," she cried openly now, "and I know I have no right to ask. I know I don't deserve it. But I'm asking anyway, because I realized I prefer a difficult life with you than an easy life without you." The boy looked at his father. He took his hand. "Dad, don't be sad," he said softly. The man looked at his son, then at her, and in that look she saw everything, the pain, the love that never died, the fear of getting hurt again, the stubborn hope that maybe, just maybe, it could work. "It's not that simple," he said. "There's your husband, there's your life here, there's a lot. I know, and I'll sort it out. But I need to know from you. Is there still room? Is there still a chance?" He remained silent for so long that she thought the answer was no, that she had waited too long, that love had died for good. But then he spoke, his voice low, laden with emotion. "There always was." She sobbed. She covered her face with her hands, years of regret, of pain, of longing, all pouring out in that cry. He got up, walked around the table, and embraced her, simply embraced her, and she clung to him like someone clinging to a lifeline in the middle of the ocean. The boy watched them, confused but happy. Something good was happening there, he could feel it. Something that made his father smile in a way he rarely saw. The following days were filled with difficult decisions. She talked to her husband. She was honest for the first time in years. She said she didn't love him, that she had never truly loved him, that she had married for security, not for feeling. He was surprised, but not devastated. Deep down he knew too. Perhaps he had always known. He accepted the divorce with a dignity she hadn't expected. He said she deserved to be happy, even if it wasn't with him. The separation was civil. She asked for nothing more than what she had brought into the marriage. She didn't want his money, she didn't want the house. She just wanted the freedom to start over. It took weeks for everything to be settled. Paperwork, lawyers, division of assets. During that time the man continued to appear, but now there was a new lightness, a hope. They talked more openly. They made plans, simple plans, for simple people, but they were their plans. The boy started calling her by her name. Then timidly he began to ask if she was going to stay, if she was going to be part of their family. She said yes, she was, and every time she said it, she felt it was more true. When the divorce was finally granted, she left the mansion for the last time. She carried only 2 suitcases, simple clothes, a few personal items, the old photos she had kept all these years. Her ex-husband wasn't there. He had thought it best. She silently thanked him for that. The man was waiting at the gate. Beside him, the boy held a crumpled but beautiful bouquet of wildflowers. She walked down the steps, the suitcases heavy in her arms. He took one of them. She took the flowers from the boy and smiled. "Ready?" he asked. "More than ever." They walked down the street, the 3 of them together. Some people looked. They saw the well-dressed woman with the man in simple clothes and the boy in worn sandals. But they didn't care. It didn't matter what others thought. The shack where they lived was tiny. 1 bedroom, a kitchen, a bathroom. The walls were damp, the roof leaked. She looked around and felt a peace she had never felt in the mansion. There was no luxury there, but there was love. There was no comfort, but there was truth. "It's not much," he said, almost apologetically. "It's perfect," she replied. And it was true. In the first few days, it was difficult. She wasn't used to housework, to cooking over a wood-burning stove, to washing clothes by hand. She made many mistakes. She burned the food, left the clothes poorly washed, but she didn't give up, and he was patient. He taught her gently, without demanding. The boy helped in his own way, always enthusiastic, always positive. She got a job at a local school teaching music. The salary was small, but it helped. He continued to do odd jobs, but now he was calmer, less desperate. Together, they managed. It wasn't easy, but they managed. Evenings were the best. After a simple dinner, they would sit in their tiny yard. The boy played, caught fireflies, told wild stories. They talked about everything and nothing, about the day, about their plans, about the dreams they still had. Sometimes she would play the guitar he had bought used. Simple songs they sang together, off-key but happy. The boy started calling her Mom, not immediately but gradually. It started with Auntie, then almost Mom, until one day, naturally, he said Mom and continued. She cried the first time she heard it, cried with happiness. That boy, who was not hers by blood, was more her son than many she could have given birth to. Months passed. Summer arrived, hot and humid. They saved every penny they could. For the boy's birthday, they managed to throw a small party. Friends from the neighborhood came, children running, shouting, playing. A simple cake she baked herself, juices, music, laughter. It was all so different from the formal cold parties she used to attend, and it was 1,000 times better. One night, lying beside him on the narrow bed, she asked if he was happy. Very, he replied without hesitation, even with all the difficulties, even without money, without comfort. Especially because of it, he said, because every one of our achievements is worth more, because we built it together, because it's real. She rested her head on his shoulder. She listened to his heartbeat, firm and steady. I love you, she said. I always have, even when I pretended not to, even when I ran away. It was always you. I know, he replied. I always knew. How? Because I felt the same, and a love like that doesn't die, it just waits. They stayed like that, embraced, listening to the sounds of the night. The boy sleeping on the mattress next to them, breathing peacefully. The simple but complete life they had built. Fall returned, a year since he had first appeared at the mansion gate. A year of changes, of choices, of new beginnings. They returned to that street, more out of curiosity than anything else. The mansion was still there, impeccable and cold. The new resident, they later learned, was a single businessman. The house was as empty as it had always been. She looked at the iron gate and felt nothing. No nostalgia, no regret, no envy, just a slight curiosity, as if looking at someone else's house she had never known. Want to go in? He asked. No, she replied. I want to go home. Our home. He smiled. He took her hand. The boy between them, holding both their hands, skipping happily. They walked back to their simple neighborhood, to their humble house, to the true life they had chosen. On the way, they passed a bakery. The smell of fresh bread filled the street, the same aroma that had once united two hearts that time had tried to separate. He bought 3 loaves of bread, still warm, crusty. They ate them right there on the street, laughing, talking, happy. Life didn't get easier. They continued to struggle, working hard, saving every penny. But they struggled together. And that made all the difference. On difficult days, when food was scarce or money didn't stretch, they had each other. And it was enough, more than enough. She never went back to playing the piano. She didn't own one, and they couldn't afford to buy one. But she played the guitar. She taught music to children in the community, for free on weekends. She saw in their eyes the same passion she once had, and she realized that the most beautiful music wasn't what was played in luxurious halls for bored audiences. It was what was played from the heart, for those who truly wanted to listen. The boy grew strong and healthy. He had friends, he had dreams, he had a family that loved him. One day he asked his father about his biological mother. The man answered honestly. He said she had left when he was a baby, that she made a choice but later realized her mistake and came back. The boy thought for a moment, then said the important thing was that she had come back, and that now they were happy. The simple wisdom of children. Years passed. They managed to buy a small plot of land. They built a simple but cozy wooden house, with a yard where they planted a vegetable garden, tomatoes, lettuce, herbs. The boy helped take care of it. He learned the value of work, of the land, of patience. She grew old beside him, grey hair, wrinkles around her eyes from so much smiling, hands calloused from so much work, but she was happy, truly happy. She looked back and saw the woman she was, concerned with appearances, with status, with empty things, and didn't recognize her. He also grew old, more stooped from work, slower in his movements, but his eyes held the same sweetness as always. His hands still held hers with the same affection. The love was still there, stronger than ever. Seasoned by the years and the struggles, the boy became a man. He studied, got a better job than his father, he married, had children, but he never forgot where he came from. He visited every week, brought his grandchildren, and he told them the story of his grandparents, how they met, how they lost each other, how they found each other again. A true love story, the kind that doesn't exist in movies anymore. One night, already old, she woke up and found him sitting on the porch. He was looking at the stars, thoughtful. She sat beside him. She asked what he was thinking about. "How strange life is," he said, "how sometimes we have to lose something to understand its value." "If I could go back," she began. "I wouldn't," he interrupted her. "Because if you went back, maybe we wouldn't value it the same way. Maybe we needed to go through all of this to get here, to understand." She thought about his words. There was a wisdom there that only time teaches. "Do you forgive me?" she asked. She still asked, even after so many years. "I forgave you the moment you came back," he said, "the moment you chose to come back." "I love you," she said, as she had said every day for decades. "I know," he replied, "and I love you too, always." They stayed there holding hands, looking at the stars. Two old people who had lived a lifetime, who had made mistakes, learned, forgiven, loved, who had chosen the difficult path because it was true, who had found happiness not despite the difficulties, but because of them. In the yard, the wind made the leaves dance. It brought the smell of damp earth, of the flowers she planted, of the bread he still made on Sunday mornings. The same familiar smells, the smells of home, of hearth, of love. Their life hadn't been easy, it hadn't been comfortable, but it had been real. And in the end, they realized that was what mattered. Not the size of the house, not the money in the bank, not the clothes they wore, but the love they shared, the family they built, the moments they lived together. The sun began to rise, painting the sky in soft hues. A new day began. Another day together, but going back in time a little to the first months after her decision helps us better understand how they got there. Because the path was not linear, it was not easy, it was not without pain. When she first left the mansion, carrying only 2 suitcases, she felt the weight of the neighbors' stares. The woman who traded wealth for poverty, the crazy one who abandoned comfort for a man who had nothing to offer but love. She heard comments, suppressed laughter, feigned pity. At first, it hurt. Every contemptuous look, every malicious comment, every encounter with old friends who turned their faces away. She had been one of them. She frequented the same clubs, the same parties, the same social circles. Now, she was the outcast, the one who had failed. But he was there, always there. On days when she cried in frustration because she couldn't light the wood-burning stove. On days when the longing for comfort squeezed her heart. On days when she wondered if she had made the right choice, he was there with infinite patience, with the right words, with the calming embrace. The boy also helped, in his own way. He said she was the most beautiful mom in the world, even in her simple clothes and with her chapped hands. He drew hearts and flowers for her. He slept cuddled next to her on cold nights. Pure love, unconditional, without judgment. The first winters were the hardest. The shack had cracks where the biting wind crept in. At night, they huddled under all the blankets they had, warming each other with their body heat. She remembered the central heating of the mansion, the imported wool blankets, the always lit fireplace. But she also remembered the emotional cold, the distant husband in the king-size bed, the loneliness that no blanket could warm. Here, in that tiny shack, cramped in a narrow bed, she never truly felt cold. Because she had human warmth, she had love, she had life. She learned to cook from the neighbors, simple women who welcomed her without judgment. They taught her inexpensive recipes that satisfied their hunger. They shared seasonings, exchanged favors. She, who once paid people to do everything, was now part of a support network where everyone helped each other. And she discovered that this was worth more than all the money she had ever had. Working at the school was gratifying in a way she had never experienced. She didn't earn much, but she saw the difference she made. Children who had never touched an instrument discovering music, faces lighting up when they hit a note, entire families coming to watch the simple performances in the schoolyard. Sincere applause, tight hugs, true recognition. On Saturday nights they gathered with their neighbors. Each person brought what they could. One brought bread, another rice, another beans. They put everything together and ate together. They talked, laughed, sang. The men played guitars, the women danced, the children ran free. It was a celebration without luxury, but with an abundance of life. She watched him on those nights, how he laughed with his friends, how he cared for his son, how he looked at her with that love in his eyes. And she realized she had traded a gilded cage for a poor freedom, and that she had made the best choice of her life. The seasons passed, marked not by the calendar, but by the rhythms of nature. Spring, when the lilies she planted bloomed. Summer, when the heat forced everyone to sit in the shade. Autumn, when the leaves covered the yard. Winter, when the smoke from fireplaces perfumed the neighborhood. Miguel grew up witnessing his parents' love. Not the performative love of TV dramas, but real love. The love that woke up early to make coffee, the love that shared the last piece of bread, the love that cared when the other was sick, the love that sometimes argued but always made up, the love that didn't need pretty words because gestures said everything. One day he brought home a girlfriend, a simple and sweet girl from the neighborhood. At dinner, she watched the young man introducing the girl. She saw in him his father's reflection, the same kindness, the same attentiveness, the same respect. And she knew they had done a good job. They had raised a true man. There were even more difficult times. He was injured in a work accident and couldn't work properly for months. She took on 2 jobs, teaching in the morning and cleaning houses in the afternoon. She came home exhausted, her feet swollen, her body aching, but he was there with dinner ready, made with one hand, with the house clean, with his usual smile. "Rest," he would say. "I'll take care of you now." Just as she had taken care of him so many times. They discovered that love isn't just in the beautiful moments, it's in the difficult moments. When beauty fades, when exhaustion sets in, when money runs out, it's there that true love appears. Not the love that needs flowers and chocolates, but the love that washes the other's tired feet. The love that shares the last plate of food. The love that stays, even when it would be easier to leave. Illnesses came with age, first him, back problems from carrying so much weight. She would watch him get up slowly in pain, but without complaining. She massaged his back every night, patiently, tenderly. "You don't have to," he would say. "I want to," she would reply. Then came her problems, arthritis in her hands from so much work, difficulty playing the guitar, holding the chalk at school. He did the heavy housework, even with his own pain. He took care of her just as she took care of him. A circle of love and care that had no end. Miguel already had his own family, but he always visited. He brought his grandchildren, who filled the house with life and noise. She watched her son playing with the children, just as his father played with him. The same patience, the same joy, the legacy of love being passed on. One afternoon they received news that her ex-husband had died. A sudden heart attack. Alone in his office, among papers and business, she felt genuine sadness. Not love, but compassion. He wasn't bad, just empty, focused on the wrong things, chasing success but losing his life. They went to the funeral. Few people present, co-workers who spoke of profits and losses. No one spoke of the man, of the things he liked, the dreams he had, what made him laugh, because no one knew. He had lived an entire life and no one truly knew him. On the way home she held his hand tighter. "Thank you," she said. He asked why. "For being you, for being here, for this life we have." He smiled. "It's the only life I know how to live." The final years were the sweetest, with less work, more time together. They sat on the porch watching the world go by. They talked about everything. They reminisced about old stories, made plans for the next day, even if they were simple plans like planting tomatoes or fixing the fence. She started playing again, on a guitar Miguel bought for her as a gift. Her hands hurt, but she played anyway. Old songs, songs they liked. He sang along, off-key, happy. The neighbors listened and smiled. "That couple," they would say. "That love." One night, after a lifetime together, she woke up and he wasn't beside her. She got up, worried, and found him on the porch looking at the stars. She went to him, concerned. "Is everything all right?" He smiled. "Everything's perfect. I was just thinking about how lucky I am." "Lucky?" she asked, looking around. The simple house, the old furniture, the modest life. "I have you," he said. "I have our son. I have grandchildren. I have memories of a life well lived. I have love. What more could a man want?" She sat beside him. She rested her head on the shoulder she knew so well. "Nothing," she replied. "You don't need anything else." The stars shone above them, indifferent to human riches or poverty. They shone the same way for everyone, for the rich in mansions and the poor in shacks. But there, on that simple porch, two hearts beat in sync, two hearts that had been lost and found, that had chosen love above everything else. In the neighborhood, the lights began to go out. Families retired for the night. Another day ended. But for them, sitting there holding hands, time seemed suspended, an eternal moment of peace. She thought of all the lives she could have had. The life of wealth and loneliness she chose first. The other possible lives she never knew. But there was no regret. Because this life, this simple and difficult life, this life with him, was the only one that mattered. "If you could go back in time," she asked softly, "would you change anything?" He thought for a long moment. "Maybe I'd shorten the time we spent apart. But the rest was perfect just the way it was, even the pain. Because it brought us here." "Do you forgive me?" she asked. She still asked even after decades. "I already told you yes," he replied patiently. 1,000 times yes. You don't need to punish yourself anymore. You don't need to ask for forgiveness anymore. You came back. You stayed. That's all that matters." "I love you," she said, as she said every day. "I know," he replied, "and I love you too, more than yesterday, less than tomorrow." It was a phrase he always said, a promise that love only grew, never diminished. And it had been true. Through all the years, all the difficulties, all the challenges, love had only deepened. The wind brought the smell of the bakery opening for the next day. Fresh bread baking in the ovens. The same smell that had united them decades ago. The smell of new beginnings, of sustenance, of life continuing. Inside the house, the antique clock Miguel had given them ticked off the hours. Each tick a second of life lived. Each chime a memory created. The clock was simple, bought used at a flea market, but it worked perfectly, marking the time that mattered. On the wall, photos of a lifetime. The simple wedding at the neighborhood church, Miguel's baptism, graduations, birthdays, Christmases, moments captured in faded photographs but alive in memory. Faces aging, children growing, love remaining. She looked at him. Truly looked, the wrinkles around his eyes, his completely white hair, his calloused hands holding hers. And she saw the most beautiful man in the world, not for his physical appearance, but for what he represented. Kindness, loyalty, true love. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she said. "I never could," he replied. "You are, the other half of my soul. How could I give up on myself?" The first lights of dawn began to paint the sky, shades of pink and orange mingling on the horizon. A new day dawning, full of possibilities, another day to live, to love, to be together. "Shall we make coffee?" he asked. "Let's," she replied. They got up slowly, their bodies not as agile as before. He held her hand to help her stand. She smiled at the gesture of affection that had become automatic after so many years. They entered the house, leaving the door open for the rising sun. In the small kitchen, he prepared the coffee while she sliced the bread. Synchronized movements of those who had done this thousands of times. A silent dance of intimacy and comfort. The coffee bubbling, the smell filling the house, the promise of a new day. They sat at the simple table, 2 plates, 2 cups, bread broken in half. They ate in comfortable silence. That silence that only exists between people who don't need to fill every moment with words. The silence of mutual understanding, of complete acceptance. Through the window, they watched the neighborhood wake up. Neighbors leaving for work, children going to school, life in motion. They were part of it all. They weren't external observers. They were part of the tapestry of lives that intertwined, supported each other, completed each other. "Another day," he said with satisfaction. "Another day together," she completed, and that was all they needed. Not grand adventures, not riches, not recognition, just another day. Another day to wake up beside each other, to share breakfast, to talk about nothing and everything, to exist together in this vast and complicated world. The sun climbed higher in the sky, warming the earth, bringing light and heat. In the small kitchen, 2 hearts beat in rhythm, 2 hearts that had traveled winding paths to find each other. That had been lost and found. That had chosen love when it was the hardest choice. And while the world outside continued its frenetic routine, chasing money, status, power, there in that simple house lived what truly mattered. Love, companionship, loyalty, the things that money cannot buy and that death cannot take. "You know what I'm thinking?" she said, breaking the silence. "What?" he asked. "That I'm the richest woman in the world," he smiled. "But we have almost nothing." "Exactly," she replied. "We have almost nothing material. But we have everything that matters. We have love. We have memories. We have each other. What more do we need?" He took her hand across the table, held it tenderly. "Nothing. We don't need anything else." And it was true. Pure, simple truth. They had built an empire without walls, a wealth without a bank account, an inheritance that didn't depend on a will. They had love. And in the end, that was all that remained, all that mattered. The day continued its natural course. House chores, neighbors visiting, a simple lunch, an afternoon rest. a common routine, a common life, but lived with awareness, with gratitude, with love. And that transformed the common into the extraordinary. At night, when they lay down again, she nestled against him as she did every night. "Good night," she whispered. "Good night, my love," he replied, kissing the top of her head. "I love you," she said. "More than anything," he responded. And so their days passed, without glamour, without drama, without great events, just the tranquil beauty of a life well lived, of right choices, even when they were the most difficult, of love that prevailed over everything. The final years brought the wisdom that only time can teach. She learned that wealth is not measured in bank account numbers, but in smiles received, in hugs felt, in moments lived fully. She learned that true poverty is not lacking money, but lacking love, and that true wealth is not having much, but needing little. He learned that forgiving is not forgetting, but choosing not to let resentment define the future. That love is not possession, but freedom of choice, and that sometimes letting someone go is the only way to discover if that person will return. And when they return, love is even stronger because it was chosen, not imposed. Miguel grew up seeing all of this. He absorbed the lessons without anyone needing to teach them explicitly. He saw love in action, not just in words. He saw forgiveness happening every day, in the small irritations that didn't turn into fights, in the failures that were accepted with understanding, in the mistakes that were corrected with patience. When his own children asked about their grandparents, he told the story, not the romanticized version, but the real one, with mistakes, successes, pain, and redemption. He wanted them to know that true love isn't perfect, it's real. It's choosing to stay when it would be easier to leave. It's forgiving when it would be easier to hold a grudge. It's building together when it would be easier to build alone. The community around them recognized the couple as an example, not because they were saints, but because they were human. They made mistakes, sometimes argued, had bad days. But they always found their way back to each other. They always remembered why they had chosen that life together. On Saturday nights when families gathered, the younger ones asked to hear the story, how they met, how they separated, how they reunited, and it always ended the same way, with him saying he never stopped loving her, and her saying she never stopped belonging to him, even when she pretended not to. The children listened in wonder. The teenagers listened skeptically. The adults listened with tears in their eyes, because everyone knew love stories that ended badly, that were destroyed by pride, by money, by circumstances. It was rare to see one that had survived everything, that had overcome obstacles, that had won. One spring she fell ill, nothing serious, just a bad flu. But at their age, any illness was cause for concern. He didn't leave her side. He prepared teas, brought blankets, sat by her bed, reading to her. She complained that he would catch her illness. He laughed and said that after so many years together, they even shared their germs. When she recovered, she was touched by the care she had received. "You always take care of me," she said, "because you always took care of me first," he replied. It was true. Ever since they had gotten back together, she had been tireless in showing that her choice was serious, that she wouldn't leave again, that she was there to stay in sickness and in health for richer or poorer, especially for poorer, because they had chosen a life without luxuries, but rich in meaning. They had learned to make much with little, to turn leftovers into meals, scraps into gifts, nothing into everything. The creativity born of necessity had become a form of art. Birthday parties were simple but memorable, handmade decorations, food shared among everyone, gifts that came from the heart more than the store. Once, he received from her an album with photos of all their years together. She had asked for copies from neighbors, from Miguel. She had searched old boxes. Each photo had a handwritten caption. Memories, feelings, thoughts. He cried when he saw it. "It's the best gift I've ever received," he said, and it was true. She received from him a bench he built for the yard, he had carved into the wood. "For my beloved, who came back when she didn't have to, who stayed when she could have left, who chose love when the world offered gold." She cried too. They sat together on the bench, holding hands in silence. No words were needed. Summers were spent in the yard. In the shade of the tree they planted together. She sewed, he fixed things. They talked about everything. Politics, neighbors, memories, dreams. They disagreed sometimes, rarely argued, always made up. "Life's too short to go to bed angry," was their motto. Autumns brought melancholy but also beauty. The leaves falling, the air getting colder, nature preparing for winter. They too aged, preparing for the inevitable, but not with fear, with acceptance. They had lived fully. They had no regrets. Well, she had one regret: the years they spent apart. But he always said those years had been necessary, for them to grow, for them to learn, for them to return stronger. Winters were for staying indoors, by the fire, under blankets. She read to him. He told her stories. Stories from their childhood, their youth, their difficult times. They laughed at the foolish things they'd done, cried for the people they had lost, thanked for the people they had gained. One especially cold night he asked, "If you could have one thing we don't have, what would it be?" She thought for a long time. "More time," she finally replied. "More time with you." He pulled her closer. "Then we already have it," he said, "because every moment we live together is worth an eternity." And that was how they measured wealth. Not in years, but in moments. Not in quantity, but in quality. They had less time ahead than behind, but the time they had was lived with intensity, with presence, with love. Their grandchildren grew up and brought their own children. Great-grandchildren who climbed onto their laps, who listened to stories, who received kisses and hugs. The family tree expanded, but the root remained strong. The love between those two, which had survived everything, was the foundation upon which several generations were built. At family gatherings, they looked around and saw what they had created. Not just Miguel, but an entire family that believed in love, in forgiveness, in second chances, children who treated their spouses with respect, grandchildren who helped their neighbors, great-grandchildren who already showed signs of kindness and empathy. The legacy was not material, it was moral, it was emotional, it was spiritual. "We did something good," she said once, watching the whole family gathered. "We did something true," he corrected, "and that's better than good." The seasons continued their eternal cycle. Springs that promised, summers that delivered, autumns that bid farewell, winters that prepared, and through all of them, two hearts beating together. Slower now, more tired, but still synchronized. One afternoon, sitting on the bench he built, she said, "I'm not scared." "Scared of what?" he asked, though he knew. "Of the end. Because I know we lived well, that we loved well, that when the time comes, we won't have left anything important unsaid or undone." He nodded. "I'm not scared either, but I have a request." "What is it?" "That I go first. I don't want to live without you again." She smiled through her tears. "We can't choose that, but I can promise you that if I go first, you won't be alone. Miguel will be here, the grandchildren, the whole family, and I—" She pointed to his heart. "I'll always be here." He took her hand and brought it to his lips. He kissed it tenderly. "And you," he pointed to her heart, "you'll have me here too, forever." The sun began to set, painting the sky in impossible hues, gold, pink, purple. An ephemeral work of art that happened every day but was never the same. Like their love, always there, but always new, always renewing, always reinventing itself. "It was a good life," she whispered. "The best," he agreed, and as the sun vanished on the horizon, promising to return the next day, they remained there. Two survivors of a story that could have ended badly, but ended well. That could have been about regret, but was about redemption. That could have been about loss, but was about finding. Night fell softly over the neighborhood. Lights came on in neighboring houses, families eating dinner, children doing homework, lives happening. And in that simple house, with that simple couple, life also happened. Full, true, loved. "Shall we go inside?" he asked when it started to get cold. "Let's," she replied. But they stayed a few more minutes, because moments like that were precious, moments of peace, of completeness, of love. Finally they stood up. He helped her. She helped him. They walked inside, hand in hand, as they had entered that house for the first time decades ago, as they would enter every time until they couldn't enter any more. Inside, the fire crackled in the fireplace. The house was warm, welcoming. It smelled of food, of burning wood, of a lived-in home. They sat at the table for dinner. Simple soup, bread, water, poor man's food, rich man's food. Because when you have love, every meal is a feast. After dinner, they washed the dishes together. He washed, she dried. Or she washed, he dried. It depended on the day, but always together, always side by side, talking, laughing, sometimes singing, transforming mundane tasks into special moments. Before bed, she played the guitar while he listened. Her hands were no longer as agile, her voice no longer as in tune. But the music was beautiful, because it was theirs. Songs that had meaning, stories, memories. Every note was a remembrance. Every chord was a feeling. When they finally lay down, he enveloped her in his arms, as he always did, as he always would for as long as he could. She nestled against him. A perfect fit, two pieces that were made to complete each other. "Good night," she whispered. "Good night, my love," he replied. "I love you. I love you too, today, tomorrow, and always." And as the world continued to spin, indifferent to human stories of love and loss, those two hearts rested together, satisfied, complete, at peace. Because in the end, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter what house you live in, it doesn't matter what clothes you wear. What matters is with whom you share your life. If at the end of the day, you can look to your side and see someone you love, who loves you, who chooses to be by your side day after day, then you have everything. And they did. After all they had been through, after all the wrong and right choices, after all the losses and gains, they had each other. And it was more than enough. It was everything. If this story touched your heart, like, comment, and subscribe. Stories like this deserve to be remembered.